What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Welcome back to the Respawn, a weekly series where I answer your questions. Let's get started. First up, do you think that Overwatch could use more bruisers since the barrier nerf? Now, in case you don't know, bruiser is a subcategory hero within the tank role. A bruiser primarily focuses on dealing damage as opposed to trying to protect teammates. A great, probably the best example in Overwatch is Roadhog. He has no protective abilities whatsoever, and he focuses entirely on dealing damage, yet he has a whole lot of health, and he is in the tank role. So, could they add more bruisers? Yes, I think that definitely would be a good idea. We need more of that sort of stuff where the game is continually moving at a fast pace. You don't want it to grind down by having lots and lots of barriers in the way, lots of different attack deletion stuff like the defense matrix and the kinetic grasp and that sort of deal. So adding more bruisers could definitely be a good thing for the game. However, you don't want to strictly only add bruisers. Now, another thing is, and I've talked about this in the past, where people don't generally like playing tanks. They don't like playing support. They want to play DPS because they want to pew 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 pew, because it's really cool to get all of those big flashy play the games and the elimination streaks and all that sort of stuff. And with characters that are primarily bruisers in the tank role, you can do that. So it's not like you're going to be able to get everyone to want to play tank, but if you have characters in the tank role that play at least in some way like DPS, then you're going to get more people into that category. And what that ends up happening is there's now less people queuing for the DPS role, which means that overall the time it takes to get into a match gets reduced for everyone. So that has the kind of extra benefit. So yeah, they could definitely add more bruisers to the game, but I don't think they should only add bruisers. Before I continue, a quick announcement. There are 4 brand new designs in my shirt store, so if you got some of that Santa money burning a hole in your pocket, you don't know what to do with it, you can support the channel and get some sweet new gear. We've got the Retro Cat Blob, the Don't Nerf It, Don't Buff It, Just Adapt shirt. My other shirt is Legendary, and the 4th new design is the level difficulty, which goes from expert to hard to normal to easy, all the way down to gaming journalist. And of course, we still have some of the old favorites, like I Need Healing. From now until the end of the year, if you use code SNOWFALL, you can get 10% off of all items. Want to point out that it is Snowfall with a 0 and not an O. I don't know why they did that, they just did. But you can get some sweet new gear and support the channel. The link for that is down below. Getting back to the questions, do you think a hero with a flamethrower is something players would like? Yeah, I think a lot of people would like to see something like that. I mean, there might be people who complain about it, but who cares? They complain about everything. How the attack would probably work is essentially the same as how Winston's work. I've talked about this just recently. Winston's attack is not a lock-on. It's an area effect. There's a little cone in front of Winston, and whenever you press the attack button, everything inside that cone takes damage. It just looks like it's kind of leaping to make it look cool, but in reality, there's a little area and everything in it just takes damage. And that's essentially how this sort of a fire attack would have, right? You would just have the flames that come out in front of the character, and anything that happens to be in that area would take damage. So we already have something in-game that works just like that, except it shows visually that it's lightning instead of visually being fire, but it's mechanically the same. I think the difference would be if you have a fire attack that there would be like a lingering effect to it, right? So maybe after you move away or something, you would still have a little bit of a damage over time on the character. So I think it can definitely work, and I think a lot of players would probably like to have something like that. It would just need to be balanced properly, and that's, kind of the big catch on all of these things that get suggested. A lot of this stuff will work, it just needs to be balanced properly. Next up, is Farah more viable now after they nerfed barriers? Yes, she definitely is, and she can be used, but there's still the really big problem that she is incredibly countered by Widow, and McCree, and those characters are used quite a bit now. I think Farah is going to be more effective on console. She's always been really effective there, where hit scan kind of struggle to deal with her. On PC, it's a different story. On PC, hit scan are much, much better at dealing with Farah players. So yeah, you can use them, particularly if the enemy team is trying to use Reaper and Mei as their DPS, then you just pull out a Farah and a Mercy. You can probably do pretty well against them, but all it takes is for one of them to switch to a Widow or a McCree, and then suddenly your Farah just isn't going to be as good. So can you use it? Yeah, but she's not really all that great. Next up, what to do when all my teammates are eliminated and I face 4+ enemies alone. Well, the best thing you can do is just get out of there, go back to your spawn room and wait for your teammates, regroup, and try another push. Or, if you can't do that, just get yourself eliminated. The best way is to just jump off the map so that you don't feed any ult charge, but you just need to get yourself eliminated because you need to respawn and regroup with your team. I see this so many times where people are trying to fight these 2 versus 6s or 1 versus 6 where the push is dead, and yet you still have one person, whether it's a Genji or a Tracer or a Hammond or somebody, and they're just trying to fight on the point when it's them versus 4 or 5 or 6. It just doesn't make any sense. They have no chance of doing anything. All they're doing really is just feeding ult charge, delaying their own respawn. That's a mistake that I see people making all the time. They simply do not recognize when a push is done and when they should just regroup. And this is not just on the attacking side either. When you're defending, even if it's like a 2 capture point map or something like that and you're defending, you are often going to be in a better situation to just kind of wait a few seconds, wait for another 1 or 2 of your team to respawn, and then go out together rather than just trickling out one at a time. Yes, there are cases when you need to stall that way and you just have to get out of the spawn room as fast as you can in order to try to stall, but in the overwhelming majority of cases, you don't want to fight those kinds of situations where it's 1 or 2 versus 4 or 5 or 6. That's just not a good idea. Just get out, get yourself eliminated, and just regroup and push again. Next up, your opinion on the strength of Junkrat as of now. Well, in the upper bracket, he's not very good. Yeah, he can break barriers quickly, but so can everyone else. So you're just better off using a Hanzo or even a McCree or something. You don't really need to use Junkrat. Even Roadhog, if you're running him, he can just right-click a barrier a couple of times and usually take it down. So you don't need that barrier break from Junkrat, and the other DPS are just going to be better for the upper bracket. In the lower bracket, you can still use Junkrat. You can just kind of spam into the choke points and over certain areas and just into the enemy barriers and stuff, and you can do that. And there is some level of effectiveness to it, to be sure, but I mean, yeah, it works, but you're probably better off using something else. He's a barrier breaker in a situation where barriers are tissue paper now. So you don't really need to use him, right? Like, his specialty is no longer all that special, pretty much. Next up, would replacing Zenyatta's Discord with anti-healing instead of damage be good? I don't think so. I think the damage aspect of it is a very good ability. It's probably one of the best abilities in the game, and now that barriers have been nerfed into the ground, it's a lot more effective. You can just place it on the enemies now that they're not always behind a barrier. I think it's a very good thing. I don't think it needs any kind of anti-healing, and I don't think it would be good to change it. However, having said that, and I've said this many times in the past, there should be more anti-healing in the game, and I think characters like Moira, for example, could benefit from anti-healing. Particularly like her damage orb, I could see changing that from just being pure damage into applying some sort of anti-heal aspect. I think that could be a good idea. It would give her some kind of a utility as opposed to just being raw healing and a little bit of damage. But as far as changing Zenyatta's Discord, no, I wouldn't. I would leave it as is. Next up, how would you change Ashe so that she is played more? That's a tough one. I talked about it quite a bit in one of my recent live streams. The problem with Ashe, McCree, and Soldier and some of the others is that they require multiple hits in order to take out an enemy, whereas characters like Hanzo and Widow only require one, right? So Ashe can land a critical, but that's not enough. You have to land a critical and another hit. It doesn't need to be a second critical, but you still have to land that second hit. And again, Hanzo and Widow, you just need the one. So that's why you see Hanzo and Widow being used so much more than characters like Ashe and McCree and the others, is because you only need the one hit. And if you have the skills to get those criticals, then, you know, why bother? Why make it more difficult on yourself? So I think the solution is not necessarily giving Ashe a one-hit ability. I think that's not a good idea. You really have to limit that sort of stuff, right? So I think the better thing would be to just make her more useful in some other way. And I think you could probably do this using the TNT ability. I'm not entirely certain how. Again, maybe they need to add, I keep coming back to this, but maybe they need to add more anti-healing. Maybe the fire effect, the damage over time, could have an anti-heal. In that case, maybe Ashe isn't going to be all that effective for getting those one hits, but she would be more effective against the bigger targets that have armor and a lot of health, because providing that anti-heal. There are lots of things, but again, why play a character that requires multiple hits when you can just play Hanzo or Widow, where it only requires one? Next up, speaking of criticals, should there be healing criticals? Interesting question. I've seen this brought up in the past. Really, the only character that would even be capable of landing a healing critical right now would be Ana, because every other healing character in the game either has some sort of a heal over time, or it's an area effect. Even Baptiste is an area effect, so his healing is functionally more like a Junkrat or a Farah as opposed to what Ana has, right? So only Ana would actually be able to land a healing critical, and it's kind of interesting why they didn't add that. I think it would be something that would probably be good for the game if there was healing criticals, but again, it would be so limited right now to just the one character. Maybe if they added more, maybe if they kind of changed how some of the stuff worked. I'm not really certain, but I think it could work, but right now it's just so limited, it probably is not worth it. Next up, why hasn't there been a Leroy Jenkins Easter egg in Overwatch yet? I don't know. A while ago, they had that loot box update where they added a bunch of those different Blizzard-themed, like Warcraft, Starcraft, Diablo-themed character skins for Doomfist and Zarya and Roadhog and some of the others. And those were easily some of the coolest, best character skins that they've added to the game. And I was really hoping that they were going to make that like a yearly thing, and they didn't. They just added it the one time, and we've never heard of it again. And I think it's entirely possible that we could have Leroy Jenkins or any of the other characters, right, like Raynor or whoever, in Overwatch as some of the character skins and stuff, but I don't know. I don't know why they're not doing it. Maybe they'll do it after Overwatch 2 gets released. I don't know. Next up, would adding a minor speed buff to Soldier 76's ultimate help increase its effectiveness, and if not, what would you add to it instead? If you're talking about an attack speed buff, I don't think that would do anything. If you're talking about a movement speed buff, again, I don't think that would do anything. Really, the problem with Soldier 76's ultimate is that it is so incredibly easy to just either avoid or to just block. Even with the nerfed barriers, it's still really easy to have a barrier that blocks the damage. You can have Defense Matrix, Kinetic Grasp, and several other abilities that will just stop his attack entirely. It's easy to just run out of the way. It's not something like, you know, a High Noon or whatever where it just kind of instantly takes you out. You still take normal damage from it. And another thing is that it just can't critical. So there's an argument to be made saying that even the highest, you know, the very high skill soldier players, you're actually losing damage by using your ultimate, because a high skill soldier player is not really going to miss all that much, and they're going to be able to land a lot of criticals. So by using the ultimate, you're forcing yourself to not land criticals, and it's just, I don't know, I don't think it's a very good ability. If you're going to change it, I think one of the things that you would start with is making it so that maybe it has some sort of a small penetration type ability on barriers where part of the damage goes through. I would also consider making it so that maybe it doesn't do a full critical, but it doesn't do normal damage either. Maybe it gets like a half of a critical extra damage, something like that. I mean, there's a bunch of different things that you can do, but it's very lackluster. I don't think any kind of like a minor speed buff is really going to change any of that, because it's still just going to get blocked. That's going to be all the questions for this week. Thank you to everyone who submitted one. Remember, I post the question card every Saturday in the community tab of my YouTube channel. You can also find all previous questions from the Respawn series on my Discord. And don't forget, again, if you got some of that Santa money burning a hole in your pocket, you want to get some sweet gear, that merch link is down below in the description. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.